Continue.
You testified before about Giodon, haven't you?
I don't know.
You don't?
Possibly. I don't remember. I'm sorry.
You've given extensive testimony in the past concerning the impact of antipsychotic medications, which would include Giodon.
It may or may not include Giodon. If you could refer me to what you're addressing, I will answer you.
All right. I'm going to show you a document and ask you whether or not you recognize this, similar to the document you previously identified by Pfizer being the side effects of Chantix. Are you familiar with this publication being the side effects of Giodon?
Yes, I think I referred to these side effects in my direct testimony. I said it would be slowing, it would be impairing, it would not be desirable.
Can you identify this document as the published side effects of Giodon by Pfizer?
No, I can only say that you represent it. So, if I could have a few minutes with a computer, I could.
Absolutely.
I will need wireless.
Beg the court's indulgence.
Well, on the computer.
We will continue as we get that information. So your testimony right now under oath, doctor, is that you are or are not familiar with the side effects of the drug Giodon.
Yes, I testified in my direct about the side effects that would be produced in a person who didn't need it. They would be quite unpleasant. They would be sedating. They would be disabling cognitively.
So let's follow up about your testimony just a few moments ago, specifically as to Giodon. I believe the words you used is that it has the potential for brain damage. Brain damage were your words.
I said all of the antipsychotic drugs. I didn't specifically say Giodon.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask specifically about Giodon.
I asked you. She's not cutting off and be allowed to finish his answer.
Sure, that's fine. I agree. And I think she was trying to recharacterize the question. So, Ms. Mays, be aware.
Yes, sir, Your Honor. I'm going to ask you specifically about Giodon because that is the drug that was prescribed to Timothy Jones Jr. in September 2014, according to the testimony you gave a few moments ago. So you're familiar with that, correct?
Yes.
And you're familiar with the fact that following his arrest, he was prescribed Giodon in September of 2014, correct?
Right.
Now, what dosage was he taking on a daily basis of Giodon?
I would have to review my records.
You don't have that information? That wasn't supplied to you?
Yes, it was.
Okay. We'll take time for you to review that.
I have my notes. I don't actually have the record, but my notes say that he was admitted on the 13th of September, I believe, in safekeeping status without being on it. Let me double check that. Let me check that. And in the period 18 September to 25 September, he was getting Giodon 20 milligrams. And then on 25 September, the instructions were increase to 1 in the morning and 2 at night. That would be 60.
All right. So 1 in the morning and 2 at night would be a total of how many milligrams a day?
On the milligrams that were being then dispensed, it would be 60 milligrams a day.
60 milligrams for each pill?
No,
20 milligrams for each pill, and that'd be 60 for a day?
yes.
And that was what date?
In my notes, it says 18th September 2014,
2014?
but I don't have the actual notes in front of me.
Are you aware as to whether or not his Geodon dosage was increased even beyond that at some point?
Yes,
You are aware?
I'm aware.
Okay, so tell us how much it was increased to after that.
Well, on the 9th of October, another drug was added. That was Prozac, and then, which is relevant. And then on the 20th of November, his Prozac dose was increased to 60 milligrams a day.
Okay.
And then, although we don't have the dispensing record, we have a note here that he was in fact also being given nortriptyline, that note being on the 10th of June, 2015.
And could you spell that drug name out for the court reporter's benefit?
Nortriptyline.
And what type of drug is that?
That is a tricyclic antidepressant drug,
That's another antidepressant.
one of the earlier tricyclics, yes. And then, continuing to review my notes, apparently my notes do not continue beyond that. I am aware, I have been told that his doses has been increased several times since then.
All right, so his Geodon dosage has increased several times since the 2014 dosage of 60 milligrams a day. Your testimony today is you don't know exactly how much it's increased to, correct?
I don't.
But according to FDA standards, the maximum dosage would be 80 milligrams, correct?
Yes. Well, I don't have the Geodon literature in front of me, but I believe that to be true.
So understanding that it's increased beyond 60 milligrams, is it your understanding that he's at the maximum dosage or higher for Geodon?
There's no prohibition on using it above the maximum recommended dose. That is up to the discretion of the physician at their own risk.
Okay, so he could be at the maximum level or even higher if a physician prescribes at a higher level.
Yes.
It's discretionary.
Yes, considering the risks and the benefits.
Okay, so with all that taken into account, one of the things that you addressed in your report was the potential impact of Geodon on the testing that was conducted on Mr. Jones by Tora Brawley back in September of 2016. Do you recall addressing that in your report?
I don't, but I remember, well, if you could perhaps draw my
Okay,
attention
if you
to it.
could turn to your report, page 4 of your report, dated November 2017.
I see the first page of what you're holding. I don't seem to have one with that date.
Well, so you are Dr. Jonathan Lipman with Neuroscience Consulting. And Did you issue a report dated November 13th of 2017 in your name?
Yes, I did, and thank you. I believe I found it. But there was more than one report, and due to some error, I do not have in my file the one that you're holding.
Okay.
Can we put a copy to it?
His pleasure.
Can y'all, Joe Whitman's? I'll get the clerk to assist with the copy, but you ought to have a copy of what Ms. Mays is asking for a copy.
And I'll continue, Your Honor, while we're looking for that. Dr. Lipman, you indicated you issued more than one report, so you have a report beyond the November 2017 report?
But my point was I have a report dated 13 November 2017 that is different from the one that you're holding. It's a single page, and it addresses the AB Panaca found in blood and packaging.
All right, well, I'm going to pass up, Your Honor. I believe we do have a duplicate report.
Okay.
I'm going to refer you to page 4 of your report. Are you now familiar with this document?
I recognize it, yes.
All right, so page 4 of your report, you mentioned that the defendant, Timothy Jones Jr., was examined April 2016 by another defense consultant named Tora Brawley.
Yes, ma'am.
You go on to state that Mr. Jones was found to suffer from a pattern of deficits that could be explained in part by the drugs with which he was then treated.
Correct. I did say that, and I do believe that.
He stated that he demonstrates deficits, including mental tracking speed and motor speed, that were severely impaired.
Yes, I did.
All right. So now, having addressed that he was taking Geodon, according to your notes, at 60 milligrams a day, but you also have information that that dosage was increased, and you don't have the amount that it was increased to, but you do know that it was increased beyond the 60 milligrams a day, correct?
Well, I've been told so.
And
I don't have any proof of it.
You've been told so by who?
The defense attorney.
Okay, so the defense attorney has advised you that his dosage has been increased even beyond the 60 milligrams a day, and we don't know how much that is, correct?
He didn't mention any dosage. He just said it had been increased.
All right.
It's possible that it had been decreased and then increased back to 60. I don't know. I don't. All I know is I was told it has been increased.
All right, well, wouldn't you need that information before coming into court today to render opinion about the effects of drugs on Mr. Jones? Wouldn't you need all of his prescriptions and the amount of dosage prescribed?
I would like to have that information. It depends as to what question I'm being asked as to whether I need to rely on that.
But you'd like to have it, but you weren't provided it, correct?
I haven't got recent prescription dispensing records for him now.
Your testimony was that, according to FDA standards, the maximum dosage would be 80 milligrams a day, but a physician can prescribe higher. I'm going to show you a document and ask you whether you were ever provided this, being prescription records of Mr. Jones, showing that he was taking 80 milligrams a day, in 2015.
I don't have the, I'm still reviewing it. I don't have the prescribed, the FDA package insert that I offered to print out when you asked me the previous question, and I needed to answer this question.
Okay.
Because this doesn't say that he was getting 80 milligrams a day.
And would it surprise you to learn that that was increased even more to, so 4 times a day at 80 milligrams to be 320 milligrams a day?
Right,
For a year.
without seeing the prescribing information,
Okay.
the FDA prescribing information that I offered to get on the previous question, I can't answer this question or the previous question or the one prior to that.
And Your Honor, if we may approach,
You know,
this would be the Pfizer website.
Thank you.
But feel free to peruse it as necessary. Did that assist you, Dr. Lipman?
Yes, it doesn't actually describe the maximum dose on this page, but it does describe the typical dose.
All right. So looking at your records that you relied on that's attached to this same report, numerous records were included from his current facility. And those numerous records would have included prescription dosages, correct?
Yes, could I keep this here?
Yes, you can keep that there. So you're familiar with this document because it's part of the underlying data that you originally provided, correct?
Yes.
All right. Your Honor, at this time, the state would offer the prescription dosage records of Timothy Jones Jr. as part of the underlying data relied upon by Dr. Lipman.
Madsen,
I think I have an objection, as you can see it real quick.
Mr. Madsen.
No objection.
Second be marked, Ms. Mays.
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
Judge, that's 195. That's good.
All right, Dr. Lipman, I'm going to pass this back up. This is State's Exhibit 195 now.
Which is admitted without objection.
And Dr. Lipman, you may continue to rely upon that document. So does that refresh your memory that the amount of dosage prescribed to Mr. Jones was in fact 320 milligrams a day?
No, it's not on this page. Oh, I'm sorry. Are you asking me to look elsewhere?
would be 80 milligrams 4 times a day for a total of 320 milligrams a day for Mr. Jones.
A moment, please. You've handed me 2 pages. The first page pertains to his administrations in April of 2016 and at no other time. The second page, which relates to June of 2016 and at no other time, is not to be added to what he took in April. Am I misunderstanding your question? Could you clarify?
Yes, so the original prescription there of do you see the first set of prescriptions? And then it's re-prescribed on the second page.
Yes, in April he was getting 2 doses of 80 milligrams of Geodon a day, and in June he was getting 2 doses of Geodon a day in June.
Okay, may I approach, Your Honor?
Right.
So we're talking about,
I failed to find your 360 milligrams.
November 2015, he had prescribed 2 capsules a day, 80 milligrams each, so that's 160. And then he has an additional prescription to take 2 more at 80 milligrams a day for a total of 320, and he is taking these in combination. Do you dispute that, Dr. Lipman?
Yes.
You've not provided that information?
You have stapled together 2 pages. Maybe I could review this more closely. One of them pertains to a prescription on the 19th of November 2015. The other pertains to a prescription on the 28th of April 2016, beginning only on the 1st of the month. They are not to be... I don't understand your question.
Judge, you would stipulate at some point in time he was up to 320 milligrams a day.
That's what we're seeking, Your Honor, and I believe that's been clarified.
It's just not on these pages, I'm sorry.
Okay, so if we could have a stipulation at this time, Your Honor.
Well, how about this?
That there would,
He can consider that in rendering his opinion if he's told that.
Yes,
The same result, he's an expert, may consider assuming a dosage of your question.
all right. So, having a stipulation, Dr. Lipman, that Mr. Jones is taking 320 milligrams a day of Geodon, you would agree that there would be neuropsychological deficits regarding his testing, correct?
Regarding his neuropsychological testing only, yes.
I believe your testimony a few moments ago on direct examination is that you would expect it to affect speed of thought, which would be clouded and slow. Those were your words a few moments ago, correct?
Yes,
And that there would be neuropsychological effects across the board.
correct.
And that was, you made that testimony without even considering that he was at a maximum dosage of 320 milligrams, correct?
I still haven't seen that record, but
But you accept the stipulation by the defense, correct?
I'm happy to accept any stipulation.
All right. So having reviewed now the Pfizer website, I'm going to show you this document that I had previously showed you.
It timed out on him.
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
Okay.
While we're pulling that website back up, if you could review this document regarding the known side effects of Geodon. having compared this publication to its website, are you able to establish that that is in fact a known side effect of geoton?
Yes.
All right. Your Honor, this would be states, I believe it's going to be 196 now
196.
for evidence.
Can I see it?
No objection.
196, without objection.
Yeah.
So among the published known side effects of geodon are the potential for cognitive and motor impairment. Correct, Dr. Lipman?
Yes, as I wrote in 2016, I think.
I'm going to that's the answer. This is, I think, the third time that she's going over it. I let it go the second time.
I'm tend to agree with you, trying to move on to something else.
Now, about the Chantix, you came in this morning to testify about Chantix being the brand name for the smoking cessation medication. What was the specific dosage that was prescribed to Mr. Jones and when?
Let me check my record. Again, I'm going from my notes rather than the actual record. I found in the 7th February 2014 record from Doctor's Care, which was a clinic. John Saunders was the physician, that he was given a Chantix starter pack with 2 continuing months.
Right. And what is the date?
The date I just spoke was 7 February 2014.
February 7th, 2014. And on this particular document, it states that Mr. Jones said that he wanted to try Chantix, and it had worked before, but he stopped taking it, correct?
Yes, that's what my notes said.
And in this doctor's report from February 7th, 2014, he goes on to say that he did well on Chantix in the past, correct?
Correct.
So the patient was not reporting any known side effects to Chantix which he had used in the past.
Correct.
And it goes on to state that he did not get suicidal on Chantix in the past, correct? And this is also medication records that you relied on in forming your opinion for today, correct? You were
Right.
supplied these part of your underlying data.
Correct.
Your Honor, we would offer States Exhibit 197, the medical records related to the February 7th, 2014 doctor's care visit.
No objection.
197, Doctor's Care Medical Records from February 14 without objection.
And Your Honor, we will substitute with the clean copy.
Okay.
So considering 197, that he did not report any known adverse effects, do you know whether or not Mr. Jones was even taking those Chantix pills around the time of the homicides, which was August 28th, 2014?
Not with any certainty, no.
Well, have you met Mr. Jones or interviewed him?
No.
So when you say not with any certainty, you really don't know at all if he was taking Chantix in August of 2014.
That's correct.
You only know that he was prescribed it in February of 2014, having reported no previous adverse effects, right?
That's what he told his doctor, yes.
And I'm looking now at Defense Exhibit 121, being Chantix. And it shows a full course of pills in this box, doesn't it?
It does.
And then 120, Defense Exhibit, not 5B, but I believe it's in Julie.
It is.
See.
Yeah, you go ahead, I'll get that.
And then Defense Exhibit 133. Also showing a full course of pills, correct? So we have 2 packs where it wasn't used at all, correct?
I see that now. I have not seen them before.
You had not been supplied this information?
No.
All right. And then we see a 3rd pack where there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pills missing and numerous pills remaining from this pack, correct?
Correct.
And that would be Defense Exhibit 120. So all we know is that out of 3 packs of Chantix, 9 pills are missing. And that prescription was from February of 2014, correct?
Correct. You're also missing the starter pack, I think.
So the starter pack precedes that, correct?
Yes.
Well, we know he took a starter pack because he reported that he had no adverse effects, correct?
Right.
And that he had done well on Chantix in the past.
Correct.
So in reality, from a February 2014 prescription, 9 Chantix pills are missing.
Apparently, yes.
Dr. Lipman, you have no idea whether or not he was taking Chantix in August of 2014, correct?
Correct.
Those 9 Chantix pills from February did not cause him to commit the crimes that he is on trial for, did it, Dr. Lipman?
Let me answer that.
I'm gonna allow that one.
Let me answer that this way. No, there's no proximate cause at all. However, people with underlying psychiatric illnesses whose illness is typically not florid but is balanced in some way, allowing them to continue their lives, can be completely knocked off the rails by drugs that provoke underlying psychosis, drugs such as abipinaca, or, in some cases, varenicline. Once the course of their underlying illness has been disturbed, then their underlying illness can be more severe. So I can't exclude any possibility that that it had some relation to how his ongoing mental illness progressed.
I'm going to ask you some more about that, especially regarding your reference to an underlying mental illness. You reviewed reports supplied to you by the defense, correct?
Correct.
Did you review the final report of Dr. Richard Frierson, the court-appointed forensic psychiatrist, dated April of 2019?
Yes, I did.
And did you review the report of Dr. Kimberly Cruz in 2019?
For some reason, I don't have that. It's possible I didn't.
You didn't?
Let me look at my record review notes.
Okay. And again, the report I'm asking about regarding Dr. Richard Frierson would be dated April of 2019.
Yes, I have that. Please name the last one that you filled me.
Dr. Kimberly Cruz.
It's not in my list, I'm sorry.
All right, so you were not supplied that information.
Appears not.
Now, you yourself do not have expertise to decide any type of psychiatric diagnosis, correct?
Correct.
You're relying on information supplied to you by the defense. Correct?
Yes.
Because the report of Dr. Frierson that you said you reviewed did not find any underlying mental illness, correct?
That was his conclusion, yes.
All right. So, moving on to the AB Panaka, since you mentioned that a few moments ago. Known side effects of AB Panaka include hallucinations, paranoia, delirium, psychosis, agitation. You're familiar with all those side effects of AB Panaka, correct?
Right.
Every single one of those can mimic a mental illness, can it, doctor?
Yes. For its duration of use, duration of action.
And if there is dependence, there can be withdrawal following that dependence, correct?
That's correct also.
So what are some of the withdrawal symptoms that one would expect for a drug such as AB Panaka?
Well, psychosis is not one of them. That's the effect of the drug, not the withdrawal. Although the effect on a person with an underlying psychosis can be very, very persistent.
You're familiar with studies on AB Panaka that include those same side effects even in people with no underlying illness, correct?
Correct.
I'll just ask that he be allowed to finish his answer before she starts the next question. That's the second time.
She's doing that. Continue on.
The withdrawal effects are mostly psychic, of anxiety, agitation, depression. To the extent that there is any enduring psychosis, such as was present during the acute effect of the drug, if persistent, that represents an underlying vulnerability to the psychosis, not to the effect of the drug itself.
You mentioned a little while ago on direct examination that metabolites may remain in the system even after the drug is cleared, correct?
That is correct.
And the effects and duration of that isn't really known because there haven't been extensive human studies on AB Panaka, correct?
That's correct too.
So a lot of this is just unknown regarding how long the drug stays in the system, how long the metabolites stay in the system, and how long it may affect someone, correct?
That is true, yes.
And then the withdrawal side effects of AB Panaka also are not well known, correct?
That's also true.
Because there are very limited studies.
Yes, that's right.
Now, Dr. Lipman, you don't have any reliable information that Timothy Jones was using AB Panaka at the time of these killings, do you?
The only information I have is his self-report and the physical evidence that was attributed to his historic use. I don't have any blood from the time, for instance.
You know that he was using, of course, at the time of his arrest on September 6th when he was stopped by law enforcement in Mississippi, correct?
Correct.
And there is a blood report that goes with that, as well as testing of the Scooby snacks and that can that was seized from his vehicle, correct?
Correct.
And even despite that spice use, he was able to use self-protective measures during the use of that spice, such as telling law enforcement.
Judge, I would object.
What?
I don't believe that it's an appropriate question.
If he knows,
You take self-protected.
I'm not certain where she was going with it. I need to hear the full question. Perhaps it is not allowed. I don't know. Go for it. Finish your question, Ms. Mays.
Yes, sir, Your Honor. You're aware, I believe you noted that you have various police reports in this case, correct?
Correct.
So you're aware that he was stopped by authorities in Mississippi on September 6, 2014,
Correct.
that he had spice in his possession,
Yes, I do.
which contains AB Panaka because that particular spice was tested and contained AB Panaka. You're aware of that.
I'm aware of that.
And that his blood test results were positive for A.B. Panaka following his arrest on September 6th.
Correct.
And yet, despite that use, he told law enforcement that he didn't have any children. Were you aware of that?
I think that was true, wasn't it?
Rephrase your question, Ms. Mays.
Yes, sir, Your Honor. You're saying it was true that he didn't have any children because he had killed them all?
Yes.
All right. Are you aware that he then changed his story and told police that he did have 3 children, but they were with the mother in South Carolina? Did you know that?
I think I recall that, yes.
All right. So that wasn't true, was it?
And that wasn't true, no.
And then he told the officer, you're familiar with the case, that the car smelled because he had garbage in it, correct?
Correct.
And then he went on to explain to the officer all of the chemical components contained in that Scooby Snacks and why it was considered legal. Were you aware of that?
I don't actually recall that.
So even under the influence of A.B. Panaka that night and under those circumstances, he was able to lie to law enforcement, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
He was able to conceal the evidence in his vehicle, the odor of decomposition, by saying it was garbage, wasn't he?
He was able, yes.
And the only information that you would have that he used A.B. Panaka on the date of the killings would be if he told you that now, correct? If you heard his confession, it was listed, or his statement, it was listed in your materials as something you considered.
Yes.
So you heard him tell law enforcement that he didn't use A.B. Panaka at all on the date of the killings.
I actually don't recall that, but I accept that he did, yes.
So you're here to testify and ultimately give an opinion as to whether or not A.B. Panaka played any role in his behavior on the date of the killings. But you don't remember in his statement to law enforcement when he told them he didn't use it all that day? You don't recall that?
It wouldn't make any difference. His use on that day is not material. I wasn't suggesting that his intoxication at the time of the offense resulted in the misbehavior. My suggestion was that it exacerbated his underlying mental illness.
Yes.
That doesn't go away when the drug goes away. That knocks him off the rails. And to that extent, he remains in need of antipsychotic medication.
So all of this is based on if he has a mental illness, and you know there are contrary reports, correct?
Yes.
And then all of this would be if he was using A.B. Panaka, it could affect an underlying mental illness which may or may not be present, correct?
I have no doubt that Dr. Agarkar and Dr. Smith have diagnosed him as suffering from a psychosis spectrum mental illness.
You cannot state that to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, can you?
I rely on them for that diagnosis.
You don't rely on the defendant's word as to whether or not he was even using A.B. Panaka during the time frame of the killings?
He had been used, I rely on him having told respondents that he had used it for 2 months prior to the killings and was continuing to use it after the killings.
All right. And again, this is self-reported because he's told different stories, hasn't he?
I'm not sure about that.
You're not sure? You're really not even sure what he said about whether he did or did not use A.B.
My recollection is that he has said that he was using it from about 2 months prior. I think he told Dr. Pearson the same thing. And he has told the other psychological and psychiatric examiners the same thing. And I would add that his present condition is not being treated lightly. Whoever is prescribing him his medications right now is prescribing him because he has a psychotic mental illness.
Again, you're relying on their relating that information to you, correct? Not on your own diagnosis, correct?
Correct.
So let's finish this about A.B. Panaka, because it's my understanding, based on your direct examination, that's really what you're here for, to explain A.B. Panaka and how it may play a role in this, correct?
Correct.
But you didn't recall that he said he wasn't using on the day of the killings, but
Judge, ask an answer.
if I understand correctly, you're now saying you have information that he was using.
I have not said that at all. What I said is, what I continue to say is that he has told all of the examiners that he had been using it for about 2 months prior to the offense and continued to use it until his time of arrest following the offense. This is a drug that can exacerbate underlying psychosis spectrum mental illness. He continues to suffer very severely from psychosis spectrum illness. He is not now using A.B. Panaka, we can assume, and yet his mental illness is profound enough for him to require antipsychotic medication.
Antipsychotic medication that, according to the previous discussions about that, is being prescribed at greater than a discretionary level, correct?
Correct.
And then when you talk about the self-reporting use, again, can you agree that this defendant, Timothy Jones, is not a reliable historian, given his multiple inconsistent stories about what he's used and when?
Judge, I give calls for speculation. I mean, they're asking his opinion on Tim's reliability. Like, I just don't think it's appropriate. That calls for speculation.
I want to rephrase the question, so I'll sustain the way the question was phrased.
I haven't assessed his reliability. I really have no opinion about his reliability. My opinion is based on the assumptions that I have made, which I have described.
Assumptions. Your opinion is based on assumptions, correct?
Yes.
And as you said just moments ago, his reliability isn't important to you
I haven't assessed it.
because you've never met with him and you don't know how many different stories he's told to how many different people, do you, Doctor?
I do not.
How much are you being paid for your involvement in this case?
I charge for my time.
And how much is that?
I charge $275 an hour, time out of office plus expenses, and $375 in court or deposition.
All right, so let's back up to all those documents that you reviewed leading up to your testimony today. That whole two pages of documents that were listed on your report dated back in 2017. How many hours did you spend reviewing those documents? Have you done an invoice?
I don't think I bought my invoices. It's not typically something I would be carrying. Sure, it was a lot.
I'm sorry?
I'm sure it was a lot,
Okay.
but
Well, how much is a lot? Are we talking over $5,000?
possibly.
And that's not including your testimony this week, correct?
Correct,
And your travel time to get here, correct?
correct.
Did you drive here or fly here?
I drove here.
So you're billing for the time that you're driving as well.
I am. My assessment was that it would actually take longer to get here if I flew,
All right.
coming from where I'm coming from.
So you're being paid by the defense thousands of dollars for your involvement in this case, correct?
I'm being paid for my time.
And all that time you're being paid for, you've never once sat down and met with Timothy Jones, have you?
Correct. That was not my referral question.
And you've never thoroughly reviewed all of his prescription information, including that Chantix that I just showed you, correct?
Apparently so.
You weren't even aware that he had only taken 9 pills that date back to February, were you?
Apparently not.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
That's
The Chantix, she asked you about that, and I guess the 9 pills. If he had started taking it a couple of years before, he's not just going to 2 years later go back on the blue box.
Yes, he is.
Is he?
Sorry, he's got to start it all over again.
So he's got to start with the green box first
Yes.
and work his way up to this.
Yeah, or he'll be very sick.
And she asked you about Dr. Frierson's report, but you also reviewed Dr. Agarkart's,
I do.
Dr. Schwartz-Maddox,
Is that Schwartz-Watts?
Schwartz-Watts, yes,
Yes, I did.
and Dr. Dorney, I believe, all found that he had a mental illness.
Yes,
And then also his treating, I guess, psychiatrist from SCDC, where he's been for the last 4 years, correct?
yes.
And what does it tell you when someone is receiving 320 milligrams of Geodon or a powerful antipsychotic?
It tells me that they are receiving a very large dose.
Objection to speculation.
Well, you asked questions about it. He can go back into it. The dosage and its effects.
It's a very large dose with a risk of unpleasant and potentially dangerous side effects. And in the risk-benefit calculation that a prescriber has to go through, that decision is not made lightly, not at all. And therefore, I am certain that the prescriber feels it is a justified antipsychotic dose.
And those doses can be upped to deal with additional symptoms or positive symptoms?
Yes,
And that's what's done generally.
it is what's done. And/or other medications are added, which are called adjunctive. I haven't seen his current prescribing information.
And they asked you about State's Exhibit 195. There are some other drugs on there. Can you go over what those are?
Yes. 195 is 2 pages that are totally disconnected in time. It's rather misleading that they be stapled together like this, but I can answer the question.
Okay.
The first, which relates to the 1st of April 2016 to the 30th of April 2016, describes his daily administration record for propranolol, which is a beta blocker drug, lowers blood pressure, but also is used in the treatment of anxiety and PTSD. Ranitidine, which is something that is an antihistamine of the H2 class. Relevant to psychiatry is the fact that he's taking ziprasidone, that's the Geodon, and he's taking Prolixin, 2.5 milligram, 1 tab in the morning and 2 tabs at bedtime, and Benadryl, 50 milligrams. Now, Prolixin is one of the older antipsychotic medications. It's more stunning, more tranquilizing, and it has a greater risk of producing both extrapyramidal syndrome and tardive dyskinesia. So he's taking 2 antipsychotic drugs. One is the ziprasidone, the other is Prolixin. Prolixin he's taking twice a day, ziprasidone twice a day, and the Benadryl he's taking twice a day. And although Benadryl is a common name and an over-the-counter drug, its use in this context is almost certainly in the treatment of the extrapyramidal syndrome, because Benadryl, in addition to its antihistamine effect, is anticholinergic, and it helps to control the Parkinsonian-like twitching and shaking that is a side effect of the antipsychotic drugs. You had handed me the 2 pages together, and the second one is of months later. It shows that he's still taking ziprasidone twice a day, but in addition, he's also taking fluoxetine 20 milligram, that's Prozac, and mirtazapine 15 milligram at night. That is a sedative antidepressant drug. It's called Remeron. And he is taking it's interesting. I'm having difficulty reading some of this scribble, I'm sorry. And he is There may be another page, but it looks as though he's not taking the Benadryl. Oh, yes, he is. His Benadryl dose is now twice a day, 50 milligram twice a day. So that is continuing. So that was in June. Therefore, there's been a change in the prescription of the drugs that are being given with the Geodon, with the Ziprasidone. But he's still taking the Ziprasidone twice a day, 80 milligram. That's 160 milligram in April and in June of 2016.
And she has also asked you about Defense Exhibit 120 that shows, I guess, the 9 pills missing, correct?
I guess it does, yes.
And she talked about the other 2 being full boxes, but actually Defense Exhibit 121 is actually missing a pill also, is it not?
Yes, apparently. Yeah, I haven't seen that first one before.
And can the side effects of Chantix be minimized by other prescription medications, such as antidepressants or anti-anxiety medications?
I have not actually researched that. That is certainly true. But the recommendation of the manufacturer is to discontinue if necessary.
No further questions.
Doctor, at the time of this incident, the killings of the children, nobody had diagnosed a psychotic disorder, correct?
I believe that's correct.
Even though he had been seen by multiple mental health professionals, correct?
Well, he was diagnosed with a bipolar mood disorder.
I can rephrase that, Your
All
Honor.
right, rephrase it because it was confusing to me as to when the examinations were taking place. So rephrase as to prior to.
Regarding an actual psychosis, there had been no diagnosis prior to the murders, correct? The killings, correct?
I believe that's correct.
All right. And all of the opinions that you cited a few moments ago that weigh in on your opinion, those were based on self-reported behaviors by the defendant, correct?
Regarding the use of AB Pinaca and Scooby Snacks and other cannabinoids for 2 months prior to and up to the time of arrest.
Well, when you talk even about any type of underlying mental illness that Mr. Madsen was just asking you about, and you cited records that you reviewed, what I'm asking you is, those records are still based on self-reported information from the defendant, correct?
No, particularly from the prison, they're based on physician, psychiatrist, nurse, technician observations of him for months and months and months. He was not immediately put on antipsychotic medication after arrest. His condition had to be evaluated, and ultimately it was. And he is diagnosed as suffering from a psychosis spectrum mental disorder.
Doctor, aren't you aware, having reviewed those records and the reports that you referred to, that the vast majority of that information is self-reported by Mr. Jones, correct?
No, I don't think it was. He answered what's happened since his arrest as opposed to pre-arrest, and that's where the question's getting confused. And so I sustained it as to the question. She's asking a different question.
Could you ask the question again? Maybe I
Yes.
misunderstood.
Yes, referring back to any behaviors or information relating to his situation prior to the killings that was self-reported by Mr. Jones, correct?
I'm trying to refresh my memory.
And if you don't know, you can say you don't know.
Well, I think there was also some neighbor witness interviews, but essentially, yes.
Neighbor witness interviews.
Could I look at my
Sure.
notes? I may be thinking of a different case.
I would just really like to go just beyond the scope of recall to this.
I can move along, Your Honor. Dr. Lipman, you're not sure, are you? You don't really even know where that information came from, do you?
No.
And according to you, his reliability for self-reporting isn't something that you considered, is it?
He didn't assess it, I think was his answer.
I think it's asked and answered.
It's been asked and answered. It's been asked and answered, sustained.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down. Yes, all right, step jury, don't talk about the case, we'll have you back in here, and then we'll finish up and go to lunch. All right.